Running Sentences presents Poli Episode 7. Movies are art. A motion picture company is looking at the former state hospital as a place to put a studio. In order for this to happen, though, Hook must convince a few film people that it is in fact actually a good idea. This is a work of fiction. All names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents in the story are of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to any actual people, living or dead, or any actual events is purely coincidental. Copyright 2020, Running Sentences Podcast. A few days after the Art Council budgetary passage, Hook returned to his office. The latest art stuff had been testing his patience, and dealing with staff who weren't exactly on his side made his head swim. But he did find that the art in his little art council office had a very zen feeling to it. He walked in, glancing to make sure that it is in fact cleaned up, which it was, aside from one last filing cabinet sitting in the middle of the room. But Susanna was there, putting one last piece of paper into it. It was then loaded onto the trolley and by some maintenance workers who were struggling to get it onto the trolley so that they could wheel it out. Susanna, has anything happened lately that I need to know about? Yes, Alice wanted to see you. She said that there was a thing about a movie studio moving into the state. What? Potentially, I think is the way she phrased it. But there were some hoops to jump through, and art needs to be sold on these that could make it happen. Hook headed straight for his desk and picked up his phone and hit the speed dial button for Alice's office phone. It rang a few times, and there was no answer. He looked at the phone receiver and then at Susanna. Do you happen to know where she is? No, but her secretary might. She has a secretary? Yes, did you not know? Yes, I guess I did know, but I just didn't think about it, so it didn't register in my mind that she might need one. Where is this secretary? The break room, but he might be in the meeting room? Hook span around towards the door and only barely managed to catch himself before he'd gone slightly fully around. He glanced about to make sure it didn't look too bad or silly of a move, and then hurried out of the office. Susanna watched this and smirked a little bit as she too headed out so that she could go to work at her desk. Hook had breezed down the hallway heading straight for the break room and barely glanced at the meeting room as he passed by. What he would have seen had he bothered to pay attention was Alice and Lawrence both sitting in the meeting room going over paperwork. But he was too busy and his mind decided not to register the sight. He marched his way into the break room and upon arrival where it should have been, stopped. Confused as a metal grate door had been put in place. He tentatively grabbed a handle, but finds that it is locked and unwilling to turn. Stunned by this turn to fate, he glanced about with narrowed eyes, trying to see if someone was playing a prank on him. As he grabbed the door handle once again and gave it a good hard shake, it didn't move. Confused, Hook scratched his head and once again looked around to see what was going on. But with no hint, he almost turned away. But before he did this, he gave the door, a metal grate of a door, a good kick and then headed off towards his office. As he made his way back down the hallway, he glanced towards the meeting room this time and stopped and stared at the sight in front of him. Upon coming into the meeting room, he stood there with his hands on his head, waiting for either Alice or Lawrence to notice that he was there. We have a contract with the Upper Valley Council to help promote arts in that area. Do you have that one? Lawrence shuffles through his papers in front of him and comes up with one, handing it over to Alice. Excuse me, was it just the one sheet or were more than one-page contract? Contracts are rarely one-page affairs, Lawrence. See if you can't find the others while I see what the commissioner wants. Alice rolled her chair back and stands up, walking around the conference room table towards the door. Hook was surprised at this, as it wasn't what he was expecting to happen at all, and she walked out of the room. He moved towards the door and then glanced back at Lawrence and then followed Alice out. She stood in the hallway as Hook joined her, looking confused. Lawrence works for you? Yes, he does. Is that what you wanted to talk about? No, I wanted to talk about the supposed movie studio thing that you were sitting around that I didn't know a toot about. What is it? And, well, tell me stuff so that I know what's going on. And well, please, a group of film people have gotten together to fund their own studio. They're looking for sites where they might potentially put it. The old mental hospital has come up in that regard. Good. No, great. That will keep Boulder happy. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. There is a catch. We have to make the place look good. You have to personally meet with these people and convince them that this is a place for them. Oh, that's no big deal. That's easy peasy. Is it? I've heard you don't like film stars as they're above their station in life. Your words may have been more along the lines of fuck those fuckers on their high horses prancing around telling everyone that they shouldn't do and be better. Hook flinched at the reminder that he had not too long ago yelled about a nearby movie production that happened near his house. They wouldn't let him leave his one-way road. So he'd gone to confront the crew, who hadn't warned him that the road would be closed. The whole thing, of course, had been caught on video and then posted to social media, and no one bothered to get his side of the matter. That was different. The small film company doing that movie happened to fail to tell people on the dead-end street that they'd be closed in if they didn't leave for the day. I'm glad this will be different. You have a lunch meeting with the first artist today. Susanna should have the details for you. Now, if you'll excuse me. Without waiting for a response, Alice turned and headed back into the meeting room, leaving Hook standing there. Hook, not wanting to look like he was not prepared, spun about again and headed straight for his office. Hook had meandered down the hallway, looking back to see if Alice was suddenly going to pop out and surprise him with something else. She doesn't, and he found himself standing in front of Susanna's desk where she was seated busy with her computer. Susanna. She looked up from what she was typing. Yes, what is it? What's up? I have a lunch meeting. Yes, I only just found out as it was emailed to me by Alice this morning, and I haven't had time to deal with emails since I finished fixing up your office papers. It will be at the Del Marta Cafe at 1 p.m. It's with a Jack Opal, a movie star of some sort. I thought his name sounded familiar. He's the guy from a big franchise movie, I think. What's he doing here in our state? Trying to get people to give him money to open a movie studio. Satisfied with his new knowledge and his slightly snide comment, Hook went over to his office and slipped inside. Susanna shrugged and returned to her work of organizing Hook's schedule. The morning slid into an early afternoon, and Hook was semi-grateful for this as it took his mind off of having to worry about it. He was nervous, but as he left the office to head for the meeting, he took his car to a small nearby town, trying to get to the cafe as quickly as he could so he wouldn't be late. He arrives just about on time and gets out of his car to find himself dodging his way through a busy parking lot to the safety of the sidewalk. Cars were moving about to hunt for a parking space in the popular restaurant. He'd been worried that they would suspect he was going to his car to leave and that they were going to follow him. Once safe, though, he left his mind as he looked at the nice brick building which housed the restaurant. Okay, I need to keep my cool and calm. He's just a movie star after all. They're people, and not perfect, just people. Soon he arrived at the front door of the establishment, which he slips inside as someone comes out holding the door open for him. Getting into the establishment, Hook takes a second to let his eyes adjust to the slightly dark interior. A host appeared from somewhere and looked him over. Do you have a reservation, sir? Yes, I believe it's either under Hook or Opal. The host then vanished away for a second into the crowd that was milling about the hosting station. That crowd hoping for seats. After a few beats of a second, the host came back looking rather grave. Are you sure that it was under those names? Fairly sure. I have a meeting with Jack Opal. I see. What's your name? Morgan Hook, state senator and art council commissioner. Let me check once more, sir. The host then disappeared further into the restaurant, and Hook glanced around to see a bunch of people giving him glances. He hoped that they were just looking over to see who he was, and not that they were concentrating on the fact that he'd thrown a movie star's name out there. The whispers of people caused him the moment of self-panic as he wondered if fleeing wasn't a better idea, with an eye of rescheduling the whole damn plan. The host, however, reappeared by his side and tapped his arm gently, causing him to jump. He turned to see what was going on now. Ah, what? Follow me, please. The host turned once again and disappeared into the crowd. This caused Hook to panic a bit, and since the host was already vanished from sight, and he pushed his way forward into the crowd with the hope of seeing the host once more. He found himself led through the restaurant itself and into the kitchen area where the host's fast pace turned into more of a glide of a walk. They moved through the kitchen trying to make sure that they didn't run into or touch anything. The loud work of the kitchen continues at top speed with all the cooks and chefs ignoring the intruders. The host stopped at a door, knocked, and then opened it, but doesn't go inside. Instead, he signaled for Hook to step in. Hook, confused, hurried up to the door and glances inside to see a chef's office with 2 people sitting inside. He walked into 2 people eating at the desk. The chef is behind the desk dealing with a plate of pasta, while Jack Opal has a rather large sandwich in front of him. Though he stands up and offers his hand as Hook stands awkwardly between the just-shut door and the desk. There wasn't much room in the office, and Hook did his best to try and not get in the way as he took the hand of the movie star and shook it. Jack Opal, I'm Morgan Hook, Art Commissioner and State Senator. Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Sorry about the whole lunch thing. It's fine, I suppose. Though I'm hungry, I don't see there's being enough room for me here to get a bite. I'll get something later. The chef, who'd been busy pushing in as much pasta as possible into his mouth, came up from his plate and swallowed. No, I can't let someone hungry leave my kitchen hungry. That would be against the chef's credo, unless you annoy me at any time during this conversation, and then you're off on your own. I'll try not to, then. Good. Listen, I don't much care about where we put the movie studios that my partners are planning. I just wanted to touch base with the people that hold the keys. I'm sure, Mr. Opal, that simplifies everything. That's what I'm trying to do as well. I'm just trying to touch base. I don't want to stand in the way of a company coming into our state. There is one thing that I need to make sure of, though, and it is that there needs to be a plethora of good places to eat nearby. Can you confirm that this place we are looking at will have that? I can't confirm that because I'm not entirely sure, but I do believe there is a lot of interest in that area, and a studio being created on that old site would certainly bring a lot of restaurants into the area, and I could push for the... Will it now? I think I can also nudge our food commissioner towards directing restaurants in the area if that would please you. Oh, yes, I think that will do. Now, I have a sandwich to conquer. Opal offered his hands once again, which Hook took and shook again. With that done, Opal had sat back down and the chef continued to eat away at his pasta. Hook awkwardly stands there for a second wondering if he'd get some food and then figured it was probably best not to test his luck. He turned and exited the office and found himself back in the kitchen. He looked around at the busy place and was tempted to try the back exit to get out, but a tipped-over trash can and a cook busy trying to clean up the furious mess nixed that idea. He managed to make his way through the restaurant and back out the front door, and once outside in the warmth of sunlight, he found himself stretching and relaxing as he'd managed to do something very good, and then dug out his cell phone to call Alice. Alice, I've got good news. Oh, your meeting went well then, sir. Yes, but it comes with a hook that I think you're better at sorting out than I am. What do you need help with? Opal said it doesn't matter to him where they put the studio as long as they have good restaurants nearby. Do you think you could help me with getting some good restaurants along? You mean talk to the food commissioner into suggesting that the area might be ripe for business? Well, it is, isn't it? I don't know for sure, but as you command, I will get the conversation started with other departments. Thank you. I'll be back in the office shortly after I get lunch. He hung up his phone and stuffed it back into his pocket. As he turned to head towards his car, the restaurant door flies open and the host comes scurrying out holding a bag and approached him. The chef's compliments, sir. Hook took the bag and before he could say thank you to the host had already headed back inside. He opened the bag to take a peek at the containers inside, but couldn't make out its contents. With a shrug, he headed not towards his car, but the park that was a few blocks down the road. After all, it was a nice day, and he decided that enjoying a lunch at a bench in the nearby park was much better. He soon was enjoying the afternoon sun on the bench, and enjoying burnt ends and pancetta tacos with the hint of lime juice that the cafe had created. He noticed that Boulder was making his way across the park in the same pathway as his bench and was trailed by his usual group of an entourage that were trying to get him to pay attention to what they had to say. Boulder slowed and stopped next to him. Hook gave a small wave hello and then held up the container that once held 6 tacos but was now down to 2. Taco? What kind? Barbecue, burnt ends, and spicy pancetta. It's got a bit of a kick to it, but it's very tasty. Boulder reached out and snatched away a taco, looking at it a bit suspiciously before taking a bite. Once he swallowed, he took another step and then stopped. How, by the way, is the Art Council doing on holding up its end of the bargain to get the art money into my district? Yes, it's complicated, and we're working on something potentially that would keep you very happy. As a side note, it appears that we're going to be helping to direct other businesses well to your district, so you might even end up owing us instead of an even deal. Really? I'll keep that in mind. Boulder took another bite of his taco and then proceeded to continue on his journey down the pathway, his group of people trailing behind him, quickly rushing to catch up. Hook, on the other hand, sat back and enjoyed the rest of his nice afternoon, only heading back to the Art Council office late. When he did get back for the afternoon at the Art Council, he was in a rather good mood from lunch and having achieved his tasks for the day. He sat back in his office chair and was pleased with the empty inbox of papers and was left wondering if there was anything left to do here or if he could go out to do some state work. As Hook reached for his office phone, a knock on the door interrupted and was opened, with Susanna stepping inside. "Oh, good, you're here. Sir, I was wondering if there was anything left for me to do today at this office, or if I could wander off and do some other things. I think Alice is busy organizing your next meeting with the movie people, but other than that, I don't know of anything, sir." Hook jumped up from his seat and headed for the door. Good. Tell Alice I'll be out for the rest of the day. If anything comes up, she has my number. He went for the door and exited, leaving Susanna there, holding the door open for him. When Susanna left Hook's office, she went directly down the hallway to Alice's and gave a short but polite knock to her office door before opening it. Alice glanced up from her typing of a paper as Susanna came in. "I just came to say that Hook has left for the day as he completed the work that we had for him." "Okay, thank you. Anything else going on?" "No, just the usual, get a paper file and get it put in the proper place. It's kind of a boring, monotonous routine, if I'm honest. But otherwise, okay." I guess. That sounds like you have an issue, or some issue. Is there a problem you would rather talk to your union rep, or do you want to talk to me? It's just that I figured there would be some stuff going on at some point, or some subterfuge, or, well, I don't know. I thought artists were supposed to be quirky. You wanted political intrigue and quirky. Well, I suppose those can still happen, but we all need to put up with the middle stuff to get to the good stuff. But don't worry, I'm sure that Hook will manage something amusing for your sake and my own. Susanna merely nodded and headed out of the office, leaving Alice to return to typing out a rejection letter. It was directed to the Shout prank artist who sought some fund for which she soon wrapped up. And since it was just about time to wrap it up for the day, she switched to checking her emails until it was time to fully call it a day and headed out. She'd made it as far as the Art Council parking lot when her cell phone rang in her purse and she pulled it out to see that Georgina Nelly was calling her. She put the phone to her ear after touching the accept call button. "Georgina, what can I do for you?" "Why is it that you suspect that I want something from you?" "Because when an artist calls me, they want something. So what is it that's wrong?" "I wanted to know about the studio deal that is going on." "I can't talk about that with outsiders." "Even if I join the group that's looking to buy the property?" "If you show up at their next meeting, then I'll talk about it. Until then, stop prying into matters." She hung up her phone and stuffed it back into her purse. It worried her that someone was prying into the movie studio deal, but with no evidence beyond the phone call, she put it out of her mind. It might not be that big of a deal. Georgina had a habit of finding out things, but then failing to do much of anything with said knowledge. Also, that the only thing that she could do was give a severe warning, but that would only act as an acknowledgement to Georgina that she was on the right track. Shaking her head, Alice proceeded to her car to leave for the night. She, however, didn't head for home, but rather for the bar club restaurant, and mostly bar, a spot where many political people hung out in safety of not being overheard. She'd walked over to the bar and raised her hand to attract the bartender's attention, but the bar was busy and her effort went unnoticed. Gene Heath came up beside her, and with whatever he was drinking, looked like it was hitting just the right spot. "Alice Jacob, what brings you to the spot where all the state food people like to mingle?" She looked over her shoulder to see him. "I'm looking to talk to the State Commissioner of Food to see if something can be agreed upon for the greater good of the state and budgets." "Oh, you've made promises, and now must pay back said promises. A lovely circle that makes the government run, but ever so slowly, so." "Yes, I'm seeking some help in pushing a potential food business, good restaurants towards an area." Can't do that." "You can't." "Well, not directly, but the usual strong encouragement and promises that there is money to be made if they go towards certain things. It helps things along, I find." "Where is this particular place?" "The old state hospital." Oh, the rumored movie deal." "I'm not allowed to say anything that would indicate that such things are happening. It however has been signaled that restaurants, good ones, would be a great bonus and a much needed in the area." "Yes, they would be. Of course, we can't just say, build over there, it's the best place to create a restaurant." No, of course not. You wouldn't want people to feel like they have to build or set up restaurants in a certain area." "Exactly. Just nudges and incentives and maybe a little everything else to get them pointed in the right direction." Alice took a step back from the bar and offered her hand to shake, which Jean willingly takes and shakes with a smile. "Thank you for your great help today." "Oh, thank you for helping me to see that we have a great need to help our restaurant." She let go of his hand and headed out of the bar, satisfied at the end result, and finally headed for home. The night came and went with little happening, which pleased Alice, who didn't want anything suddenly sprang up on her. She now sat in the meeting room of the Art Council office across from Don Keith and Don Keith's lawyer, both of whom seemed put out by the size of the space and that there wasn't little snacks to nibble upon. "Is everything well on your side?" "Oh, it's fine. We had to look around at the old hospital yesterday. I had to put on some dreadful boots to get around." "Yes, the matter of the boots. We wish to know if the ground is like that all year round, or is it what's going on with that situation?" I will look into the matter. The hospital was originally built on part of a bog, I believe, and when maintenance stopped, the former bog took over again." "We don't want to own a bog, especially if it makes us wear dreadful, ugly boots to get around." You won't have to, I can assure you that, Dawn, Miss Keith. So where is this commissioner that I have to meet? I have important stuff to do, you know. I have a movie to get back to." "I'm not sure. I shall go check if you'll excuse me." Alice hurriedly pushed her chair away from the meeting room table and got out of the room as fast as she could. As she hurried her way down the hallway to Susanna's desk, she found Susanna at her desk, staring at her computer. Lawrence was also around, not far off, reading a file from the filing cabinet as Alice came over. "Where's the commissioner?" Find him for me? Now. He needs to be here now." She turned to Lawrence as Susanna picked up her office phone to dial for Hook. "I could use your help." "What is it now?" "The ground at the old state hospital. We need to know what's going on with it and if it's fixable." "Fun." Lawrence walked off towards her office, and Alice turned her attention back to Susanna. "Well, I'm sorry, Alice, his phone isn't picking up." "Well, please keep trying." Alice turned and headed back towards the meeting room once again as Susanna resumes her attempts. Having just made her way back down the hallway towards the meeting room, she caught sight of a rushing and ill-suited, disorganized Hook who had homed into view. He came up to her looking hurried, with his buttoned-up shirt not fully tucked in and his jacket seemingly only half on. Alice stopped and stared at him. "Sir?" "Sorry for my lateness. Long night debating a fellow legislature rep about art subsidies and such. I didn't get much rest before my wife wound up waking me up early and said I had places to be. Of course, I rushed over here as fast as I could, but..." "Did your debate go well?" About as well as tapioca pudding, and about as interesting." "Is anything going on?" She pointed towards the meeting room. Our second and to final movie star is here to talk about the site. She's worried about terra firma. What is that word you just said, or 2 words? The ground. She's worried about the ground sinking and becoming a bog. Will the ground become a bog? It might. We don't have all of the information as of yet, but Dawn Keith would like some assurances anyway. She's in the meeting room with her lawyer. Hook, who'd been straightening himself out, looked over towards the meeting room and hurried up his efforts. He was soon slightly more presentable, and with a gulp of air headed towards the door with Alice leading the way. They strolled in, with Hook finishing straightening his jacket, and he stepped forward and offered his hand to shake. Dawn looked at it and signals for her lawyer to shake hands with Hook, which the lawyer then does. This is Commissioner Morgan Hook. Apologies for my lateness. I was arguing with a friend of mine about art subsidies last night, and it ended with lots of drinks drunk and then me failing to wake up to my early morning alarm. Not that you care about any such things. Oh. You're worried about the ground at the state hospital. I cannot tell you for certain what the ground will do. I will, however, promise that it will be sorted out and solutions run up to me. If those answers are good enough, I will get in touch with you and your lawyer, then pass the news along. And I will probably have it by sometime tonight. Does that sound about fair? Yes, I guess that should sound about okay. Good. And great, good, and all that. We have some other business to attend to, so if you'll excuse me, it was a pleasure to meet you, and goodbye. Hook then waved his hand and turned and walked out of the room. Alice tried to offer a grin and put a bright spin on what had just happened, and then moved towards the door. Excuse me as well. She exits, heading after Hook as Dawn suddenly grins, and then also gets up. Just outside in the hallway, Hook stood waiting for Alice to exit, and when she did, he pulled her off to the side. How was that? What? How was the performance? Good enough to win over Dawn or whatever her name was over to saying yes? I think that relies on what information we give her about the ground, but I suppose you handled yourself well enough. That's good then. I think I have some early morning work that needs to be attended to and signed off on. He turned and began to walk away. You're only looking forward to the papers so that you can escape, right? He half turned, maybe, and then headed off down the hallway. She was left shaking her head as Dawn and her lawyer exited the meeting room. Interesting and odd commissioner you have there. He talked around the subject of the grounds, but a bit straight. You wouldn't get that in many places. He does keep us hopping mad, though your last partner will be a challenge for him. Dawn came over with her arms held open for a hug, which Alice slightly accepted. Oh, goody. That will spice things up to the max. Please keep me informed about how that goes, will you? I will try. Alice then directed Dawn and her lawyer down the hallway to the elevator so that they could exit. With them gone, she headed back towards her own office. And she made it pretty far, but only up to Susanna's desk. As she tried to walk past, she stopped. The young secretary wasn't at her desk. She took a moment to look over the files on the desk to see if there was anything interesting that she hadn't seen before. Then grabbed a notepaper and quickly wrote to Susanna to come see her if she had a free moment. With that accomplished, Alice left the note on Susanna's keyboard and headed straight for her office. It was there that Alice spent most of her morning looking over requests for funding from a variety of artists, all of whom had managed to pass through the rigorous scanning of lower employees. All of them, Alice figured, had scanned the papers that most of the information was okay before rubber stamping it and then passing it on along the line. A morning spent like this until the early afternoon had drained much of her energy for dealing with things. Susanna appeared in the doorway and Alice was staring at some papers and did enough to catch her attention before Susanna could knock. Oh, you asked to see me? Yes, I was wondering if you're still interested in the dark underside of this work. The excitement, as you so put it. Has something happened? Alice rose from her chair. Potentially. Follow me to Hook's office. He's still in, right? Yes. Good. I need you to keep tabs on him tonight and tell me all that happens. Oh, this is heating up. They exited the office and headed down the hallway. The duo came to a stop in front of Hook's office door, and they didn't enter. I want you to understand what I want and need from you tonight, okay, Susanna? Nodding her head excitedly, Susanna grinned. I need you to keep Hook from making any promises that he cannot keep or from blowing up in anger. I think we're more in danger of the latter happening than the former, but I need to know all that goes on just so we can curtail any damage. Okay? Yes, except... Which is the latter again? It means the ending statement, the anger one. Right, got it. With that, Susanna opened the door and proceeded through with Alice following her. Hook, who was at his desk and on his office phone, the ear listening to some blabbering on the other end of it. The whole thing was boring him endlessly as the two came in, and he quietly signaled for them to head to the chairs across from him. Yes, Bob, I understand that a report can't be made in a day about the ground effects on the old hospital. I just want the basics so that if I can help sell it, the state has one less thing to worry about. And there was some more blabbering from the phone that couldn't be made out. And I know you have the old report lying around somewhere around there. I was on the commission that ordered the state to look into the grounds. I just need the basics, not the full-fledged report, to see if the place might be good for the yards. Come on, Bob. There was more blabbering from the phone, and Hook was doing his best to control his rising anger. Listen, I get your point, and I won't act on the report, but I have to go as I have other people I need to attend to. So please, just send a copy of the old report over. Hook finally hung up the phone and, exhausted, and looked over at Susanna and Alice. I have Lawrence tracking down what we need. You don't need to worry about getting a report on your own, sir. Yes, but if I didn't, I would be left sitting around doing what I always do here. Sign papers and then push them onwards. Anyway, what is it you're here to pester me about? The next person you need to meet and greet to win over. Oh, what's this one gonna complain about then? How their socks aren't artistic enough, or that we aren't giving enough money to the arts? You. Me? You happen to know the person who isn't exactly happy with you the last time you saw them. He is a Dr. Vincent Claude, producer and director of independent movies all over the place. I don't know anybody by that name. Perhaps me saying you know him is a bit of an overstatement. He knows you as you interrupted production of his movie that was filming on your street. Oh crap. Yes, the meeting is set for tonight at the Gallantry Club bar. I will not be there, but you will have Susanna here with you. You aren't coming? You'd keep a tight lid on me if you suspected I was about to make some blundering error, and now you're busy? Why? I have some other matters to attend to about the office. Plus, it's good that you get a little independence, don't you think? And a little bit of a reprieve from my watchful eyes. You haven't caused a huge mess yet, have you? I don't believe you that you trust me. Alice merely shrugged and stood up. As you wish. You don't have to believe me, but I won't be there for your meeting at 10 p.m. I only request that you do your best to keep calm and cool. I'm sure Susanna here is eager to find out your plan of action. Yes, I am. I'll leave you two to it then. And she headed for the door and exited as Susanna was eager to learn of any plan, inched her chair forward, and then inched herself so that she was sitting on the edge of the chair. Plan? I have a plan. I plan to have a few drinks and see how it goes, Susanna. We don't need to rush anything else. Good start. But we need to make sure that no big promises are made and that you don't get angry at this doctor. Right, you can figure out how to do that. In the meanwhile, he motioned towards a stack of papers in his outbox. These need to be dealt with and filed away as well. Please go do both. Susanna nodded furiously but disappointed and grabbed the papers and headed for the door. I can do that, sir, but we need a good way to keep things from getting heated. Despite alcohol being present, it's just, we need you at your top form. This is going to take some thought. She clutched the files tightly so that none of them would escape as she headed for the door and would spend the rest of the day thinking of ways of helping, though mostly doing filing. Hook would also spend his day pretending to think about what it is he needed to do while signing the papers and doing all he could to keep Susanna busy from asking him any further questions. They did this until it was evening and they could call it a day. It would take a few hours and into the night before Hook and Susanna would meet again. They found themselves in the parking lot of the Gallantry Golf Club and Bar. Hook stood by his car waiting for Susanna and his wife, Carol, to come over. The glitz and glamour of the golf club parking lot with its assortment of expensive cars did not escape his eyes, as well as the exotically shaped club with lots of jutting angles and painted white and tons of glass to go along with it. The whole place screamed rich and famous and silly. But he kept all of this to himself, as it was best not to blab about such things, and soon his wife and Susanna were by his side. "Shall we go in, husband of mine?" "Yes, I'm sorry about dragging you away from your stuff. Oh, I know. The looks and the questions wouldn't be good for your career if they were seen with your secretary. Come on, Susanna." Carol looped her arm into the crook of Susanna's arm, and the two headed off before him. He trailed slowly behind them. They made their way down across the parking lot and found themselves heading up a little staircase to the front door, where a security guard stood and looked them over before letting them pass inside. The lobby to the golf club was no less luxurious than the exterior, with everything looking just so, and nothing was a touch out of place among the glint of fine items. Hook had caught up to his wife and Susanna, who had both stopped to look at a chandelier which hung above a fountain. The sight was quite surprising, as the fountain was tossing water leaps through and around the chandelier without touching or hitting a single part of it. "All this opulence is making me feel like I'm dirtying the ground and air just by being around it." His wife, Carol, pinched his arm. "Yes, it is pretty much a silly way, but it wasn't our money to spend, so I don't mind much. It is nice, though. Everything feels expensive, and it won't break if you accidentally reach out and touch it. A sign of true expensive in my eyes." Carol and Hook glanced over at Susanna, who had said it, and was still looking at the odd chandelier. Hook, however, was taking his time looking around the lobby for this bar that he was supposed to be at, and only found a bar and restaurant nearby, and he went off to see if that was the place that he needed to be. Susanna and Carol, however, continued to stare at the hypnotizing sight of the water fountain and chandelier. As Hook made his way over to the hosting podium for the restaurant, which looked to have a decent amount of people, and for the late hour, he could make out the sight of what looked to be a bar on the other side of the tables. The host suddenly honed into view. "Can I help you?" "Yes, I was looking for the club bar. I am supposed to be having a meeting with a Dr. Vincent Claude." "This is the bar or restaurant, sir. The bar is on the other side of the establishment. Now, unless you have a reservation, good day." Hook, realizing he might have pissed off the restaurant host, backed away with his hands held up and went over towards his wife and secretary. As he came back over to them, they grabbed them each by the arm as they were still gawping at the fancy sight and gently directed them away so that they could move. Both found themselves snapped from the hypnotizing state, and they wandered the lobby to the other side, found a hallway which had a sign that pointed towards the bar. They managed to find the bar and headed in, and then were directed towards a corner booth which Dr. Vincent Claude and his companion Bruce were sitting at. Vincent looked over at them as they approached. "Ah, yes, the infamous shouter at my film. I've been looking forward to this." As Hook got closer, he let go of his wife and secretary and offered his hand as a greeting. It was taken up slightly limply by Vincent, who gave it the barest of shakes and dropped it. "Well, I think the only way to start with this is an apology. I'm sorry I shouted at your crew and everyone working that day. It was wrong of me, and to take it out on any of you." "Fine. I suppose I shall accept an apology for now in order to move this discussion along." The three then slid into the booth so that they were sitting across from Dr. Vincent. Well, I guess the basis for this conversation is to get in touch and see if there was something that you needed to be addressed by us at the Art Council, all to make sure that the deal was worth considering on your end." "And what did my partners ask about?" Well, one wanted to make sure that there was good food and restaurants in the area. The other wanted to make sure that the ground was going to hold up at the state hospital." Susanna, who was on Hook's left, eagerly sat up and inched forward on her seat. Both of those, by the way, are being dealt with quite well. Yes, apologies. This is my secretary who knows all that's going on, and the other more important lovely woman to my right here is my wife, Carol. Well, hello. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Vincent. I only know the briefest of what's going on here, but I hope it ends well. Thank you. For once I don't feel like I'm being sold vapor smoke that the second I look past will vanish. I don't trust the state to do what it says and hold up its end of the bargain. No, there will be no promises, and you will sit idly about while we make our choice. That's what I want, and that's what you will give me. This meeting is over. My apologies for dragging you out so late, though. Dr. Vincent and his associate slipped out of the booth and headed straight for the exit. This left the trio sitting in the booth and trying to take it all in. Across town, Alice's car pulled into a quiet, mostly empty parking lot and pulled alongside of another car. She stepped out of her car after turning it off, a move which was followed by Georgiana, who stepped from her car. The two women came around to standing in front of one another, with Alice looking very displeased. Well, it is nice that you're including me in the movie deal. I'm not doing any such thing. Are you sure that's the road you wish to take? I will not let deals be dictated by you. Oh, please, the rumors are all over the place. Plus, I can bring them down in a heartbeat. You can't, and you're all talk. It's your one failing. Your mouth never matched up with the art that you tended to put up. Alice turned to head for her car. Don't mess with me, Alice. I have more connections now, and if you walk away, this whole thing will fail. Alice ignored her and got back into her car and started up. A few seconds later, she gotten into gear and was reversing out of the parking lot to drive off. Georgiana walked a few feet after her, shaking her hand, and then giving her the middle finger to show her how she felt. End of episode 7. Thank you for listening.